Also, good night and welcome to Mindful Live 147. Yes, it's 147. Thank you for being here. It is the 4th of the second to last month already. Yeah, the year is speeding along. And tonight, we're talking schools and a bit of criminality that reared its head right next to a school recently and found itself in the news. How the PM get COVID again, someone is speaking about there. Well, he got COVID again because you could get COVID with or without the vaccine. Listen, I've said this numerous times already for the week because there are lots of stories coming out now in and around that whole vaccine and watching back on the pandemic and issues that were there during the pandemic. And like I saw an article in the Atlantic, a publication, and they were talking about it's time for a pandemic amnesty. So let's all forgive each other for all the things that were done during the pandemic that some people may feel wronged about, etc., etc. And they were saying that because what's happening now is with more and more information coming out, people are recognizing, okay, some of the decisions that were made weren't exactly the best decision. And people were back then people were talking about it, and right now they're talking about the science and the science and the science and following the science, and the science is not the issue. The science and whether the science changed, etc., that's not the issue. We're not the questions are not scientific in nature, they're political in nature. Good night, Earl Panton. So you could have science that says that displays that rainy season begins at a specific point in the year. What you do with that information isn't science. That's a matter of a political decision. To say that we were following the science isn't exactly correct. You made a political decision based on what you understood or wanted to do by that. So yeah, that whole thing, there's some hindsight needs to be put into that, and people need to look back on some of the issues that happened during the pandemic, and I think learn some future lessons about the nature of governance and government and people in charge and what they would do and what they are willing to do and what they are capable of doing. But I digress, because that's not what we were talking about primarily today. But if you're inside of the live, whether it's over on TikTok, on Instagram, or on YouTube, hit that like button. It does help, and join the conversation. If you want to say something in the chat, jump in and talk. Yeah. Also, you are free to head over to YouTube at any point in time and follow my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over there on YouTube. You are able to catch up on all of the lives. If you missed any like that, you are able to catch them up. And when I'm speaking on articles, the articles are there behind me and all of that good stuff. There are also other videos that I drop relatively regularly on my YouTube channel. Head over there. Also, this is as usual brought to you by Mindful Education, Mindful with 2 L's, Mindful_education over there on Instagram. You can go and follow us there, and the information on how you can access or register for our pod learning, our learning pods, you have that information there if you are so interested, starting from preschool right up to CXC ages. All right. So let's jump into some of these stories. Can I say something again? You don't have to ask to say something. Asking to say something is a question in and of itself. OMG, did you? Yes, we're getting to that, Nisi. The amnesty is to avoid accountability. Precisely, sir. Rock and Kameen look alike. All right. Nathan, that Saturday at 3 is a scene. Well, you didn't reply for another time because there are other times available. I was just saying quick and easy time. So yeah, reply and we can work out a time. There are still various time slots and various days available. So yeah, we're talking about hi Liana Allen. We're talking about that very unfortunate incident that went viral. It went viral. The video where the teacher was there in the school and she was trying to get her students to duck down as gunshots rang out around the school. You could hear multiple gunshots firing, and then you're hearing some further away and some nearer. Yeah, it's some difficult stuff. That's my bad. I answered out loud and forgot to type it. Ha! Normal stuff. Normal stuff. So yeah, let's jump into the article that spoke about that. Where's that article? Okay. Shootings outside Rose Hill school residents retreat in fear. Several Rose Hill residents said yesterday, while they were aware of the prevalence of gang warfare and violence, they felt hurt the gangs were unleashing their venom in close proximity to innocent children and citizens. They felt they had passed the threshold of decency and had begun to lose all reason and turn to brutish deeds. Whoever was the resident that said that, they may be an author. You know, I found those words to be very poetic. There's a rhythm to that whole thing. Good words chosen. And you see, that's one of the problems with gang warfare. And, you know, in Trinidad and Tobago, when I look at the murder rates, you could sometimes have some solace. And let me finish what I'm saying before you think otherwise. You could sometimes have some solace in the fact that most of the murders in Trinidad and Tobago are gang related. They're crime related. By and large, many of the people who are murdered on that daily basis kind of thing are people usually involved in criminal activity. So you could feel to yourself sometimes that, you know, if I keep myself clean and out of this, then I'm fine. But you see, that's the thing. When you have something like gang warfare in a country, gang warfare has a tendency to escalate. Gang warfare doesn't remain at one level. That's the very nature of how gang warfare goes. It continues escalating, and they aren't going to stop until something stops them. They aren't going to stop until something stops them. And so I could understand as a resident, if you're a resident in some of those more hotspot areas, some of the gangsters, you know these guys, you grew up with these guys, you aren't thinking of them in such a criminal light. You know, oh gosh, you know, they give some trouble, but you know, that's just how it is. Some of them young fellas, some of them are a little more troublesome than some, and you know, they mean good, and some of them still mannerly and all of that. And yeah, that might be true of the individuals, but if they're now involved in gang warfare, and one side kills a member of one side, and then that side kills two members of that side, and that back and forth starts to accelerate, it's just going to get worse and worse. And it's not ever going to just remain with the bad guys themselves. Innocent people are going to be picked up in it eventually, because they're going to get more reckless and more bold. And as they get more reckless and more bold, the amount of collateral damage that would occur and that they would be okay with happening is going to increase. Inevitably, it's going to increase. They saw that in the United States when the mafia, the mob started to accelerate. Some of those mobs and mafia families started with real important rules about not harming innocent people, and you know, you don't do things like that, and we conduct our business in a different way, and we're trying to have a decent. But from the moment war breaks out, the rules and all of that end. It ends. And it's everyone for themselves, and eventually it's going to get more reckless like this. Citizens were left in shock after a video showing primary school children ducking below desks as a gun battle raged outside the Rose Hill RC Primary School in Laventille on Monday, forcing the school to be closed as the children took cover. A teacher is heard saying, oh my God, children, down. No pupils were injured, thankfully. Some residents also said they were fearful, and they obviously wouldn't want their own faces out there. Some of the residents, in their bid for safety, are saying that, you know, they think they should bring back Gary, because this thing is just getting too brazen right now. Most definitely. So I really don't feel safe in crowded areas in and around Port of Spain. Like, who would? Who would? So the residents are saying that, and some of them are saying they should bring back Gary. But in response to the outrage, the virality of this whole thing, our Minister of National Security, this is the man that is supposed to be in charge and controlling the aspects of the national security. He is being paid very well to do this. And his response upon seeing the virality of this video where the children were cowering under the desks, finds Rose Hill RC students were not in danger. Video misleading. Earl Panton says these persons are sheltered by the silence in their in their respective communities. Hotspots are nurtured. Rowley will never bring back Gary. I don't think he ever will either. But I understand what you're saying there, Earl Panton, and that's something I agree with totally. I regularly say I am a subscriber to the idea that poverty doesn't cause crime. Crime causes poverty. So this school cannot reopen. Who suffers because of that? The members of that community. They lose out on an education. Anyone in that community with enough resources is going to leave that community because their child has to get their education somehow. They're going to leave that community. You leave then only the people with the least resources and the people who care the least about education in that community. And you keep doing that cycle and cycle again. Each time criminality rears its ugly head, you scare out all the people who can afford to and the people who want to. You're concentrating in one area, criminals and the poor. And that's how you get those hotspots created. And from the moment, I understand saying that, yes, the people living in these areas are supposed to be able to, a lot of it is up to them to say what is going on in and around them. Don't harbor the criminal elements. But that's easier said than done. I remember in a live when I was going at it with some police officers inside of the live in the comments, many of them were talking about the dangers of selling out their fellow police. Knowing many police officers, I believe personally, this is my personal opinion, my belief, I think every single police is aware of another fellow police officer involved in less than upright activities. I think every single police will know another police officer like that. But are we seeing on a daily basis police confessing and coming out to the public and making whistleblower little leaks about corrupt police officers? No, we aren't seeing that because we understand there's some danger in it and there's some difficulty in selling out the people that you see on a daily basis. So if police officers who carry around guns and have legal authority to enforce law and get violent with people, if they are afraid to confess things about people surrounding them, like, can't you understand why people who are living in those areas would be afraid of that? Especially knowing that the law enforcement side of it has enough corrupt elements that you could make the risk and think, all right, I'll do the correct thing, and then they sell you out and you're in trouble. I call it systemic destruction of our future generations. Yeah, it is, but some of the cycle stops with the individual, but we're talking here even on the systemic side. So this uproar that can our president declare a state of emergency and instruct the army to get involved? Manny asks. No, our president is not an executive president like that. You're thinking about the president like the United States president. Our prime minister and the cabinet are the ones to declare a state of emergency and instruct the army to do what the army might have to do. And I don't know if you really want them to do that. You think really long and hard if that's exactly what you want them to do. But yes, our Minister of National Security, upon seeing the virality of all of this, his comment to come out, his comeback to come with is, it's not as bad as it looks. As people across this country continue to express shock and outrage over primary school children having to hide under their desks during a nearby shootout, National Security Minister Fitzgerald Hines has said the students were not ever at peril of any physical danger. If I heard about the murder on Drayton Street. Drayton Street is in which area? Which area is Drayton Street? I don't know. I did read about a good bit of the killings. San Fernando, that's the murder. Are you talking about the man and his wife? Is that what you're talking about? Well, of course I heard about that, if it's that you're talking about. Should have been fired for even uttering that foolishness. He's the same one who said that it is not his job to keep the population safe. Yes, that's the same guy. And you kind of get the... you kind of get the idea of why someone may have wanted to dash some water on him when they saw him in that community. You see, the problem with a statement like this is that's not the issue. The issue here isn't whether anyone was shooting at the children. The issue here isn't whether the guys were playing Call of Duty on the actual school compound. That's not the issue. And I think the vast majority of people are very much aware that the shooters were not literally on the school compound. Like, that was known. That's not the problem. The problem is the very vicinity that it is in. Let me read the statement from Mr. Hines himself. The video of the children. This is Mr. Hines speaking. Good night, Florence, and good night, Brenzo. The statement from Fitzgerald Hines. The video of the children of the Rose Hill RC School in Laventille laying themselves onto the ground at the sound of automatic gunfire, and in which the voice of the teacher telling them, shh, signaling that they keep quiet, was quite misleading. Now, for one, I'm not getting in on that right now. For one, from the moment he says this, it begins to have a tone like he's kind of accusing the teacher of making it seem like something it isn't. From the way how he frames it here, it sounds nearly like an accusation against the teacher. And I would think, as the Minister of National Security, a teacher even hearing gunshots in the classroom and having to say anything about it, you should hush about accusations against a teacher like that. Let's choose one criminals having citizens in fear or two military having criminals in fear. Military could have the citizens in fear too. That's not 1 + 1 = 2 necessarily. Liana Allen in a class and the shots were sounding loud. That man not fit to be in government. Florence says correct Nathan. Yes, continuing with Mr. Hines' statement. You could be forgiven for thinking that gunmen were actually on the compound. They were not. In fact, the actual shooting took place about 200 meters away. This video, which went viral, came to my attention only yesterday. The event occurred on Monday. The Commissioner of Police and the Senior Superintendent Port of Spain Division briefed me on the facts. The school administration made it clear that the children were not ever, from that incident, at peril of any physical danger. All right. Several things and several problems with this. He is saying the actual shooting took place about 200 meters away. That cannot be the complete truth, because the story is it was a shootout. Rival gang members were shooting at each other. So the two different party of gangs would not have been both at the same spot. And judging by the fact that none of them were hit, no gang members were killed, none of them were injured, nobody pick up any corn, as they say, that means they weren't that close to each other. Granted that some of them aren't that straight too, but also they weren't that close to each other. So if one group was 200 meters away, there would have been another group at another distance away. So to make it seem like it was one shooting at one spot 200 meters away, that's incorrect. Also, just to keep in mind, the fact is these guys launched off these shots and none of them hit each other. That means all of those bullets hit targets that they didn't intend it to hit. The men were not aiming too precisely. High-powered rifles were being used. High-powered rifles can shoot from quite a long distance. They are able to shoot from upwards of 600 yards. Bullets, as some people say, they're ricochet. These men, you don't know all the directions they are aiming in. To come here and say it's misleading, to make it's misleading, the video is misleading, and make it seem like the teacher in the video made it seem like it was more than it is. Are you insane? Can we imagine how it would have looked if gunshots were ringing out, one side was shooting, the other side was returning fire, and the teacher just sat there in class and told the students nothing, and like, don't worry students, don't worry, they aren't aiming at us. And if, heaven forbid, a stray bullet flew through the class window and, heaven forbid, hit some student, then everyone would have been, why didn't the teacher take some kind of measure? Collateral damage, the nature of collateral damage, the nature of people being hit as bystanders is that they weren't being aimed at. No one is aiming at the bystander, at the innocent bystander. They aren't aiming at them. They get hit nonetheless. This statement, to me, I find this statement to be disqualifying. I find this statement by Mr. Hines to be disqualifying of his portfolio. As Minister of National Security, an incident where high-powered rifle shots are ringing out inside a classroom, echoing. Multiple shots. Your statement there shouldn't be anything other than we are trying to make sure this never happens again. That's the only statement you have there. Misleading about what? What is misleading? Who misled who? To make the issue here be that the video is misleading, who is being misled? What are we being misled to believe? That criminals are having shootouts close to schools? Is that something that is untrue? Like, what is the misleading facts here? What's going on? And this is what he focused on, our Minister of National Security. This kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that actually scares you a bit. The teacher taping with a phone don't sound like she did it for fame or recognition. Like, I don't know and I don't care. Like, listen. Even if the teacher was looking to go viral, looking for fame, looking for recognition, like even if it sounded like that, leave that for the regular people to discuss. That's not for the Minister of National Security to discuss. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? That's not for you to discuss. Your job is to ensure that the school was safe. You aren't doing your job, or the people under you aren't doing their job, and because of that, the gunshots ring out next to the school. And instead of coming at it talking about your area is national security, your area is misleading video. You aren't the Minister of Misinformation, of online content distribution. You know, that's not your portfolio. You are the Minister of National Security. Your position here is to come and say the national security basis of this. I look like someone named Amlak James. I do not know an Amlak James. The statement seems to downplay the seriousness of the situation. And that's exactly it. That is exactly it. The statement from him seems to look like he's trying to politicize the situation in the downplaying sense. He's trying to downplay it for their own political benefit. And think about that. Like, really take a pause and think about that. The Minister of National Security wants to downplay the severity of primary school children ducking from gunfire during school hours. The Minister of National Security is trying to downplay that. David Dookie says, what about having the soldiers patrol at night? Trinidad too small to have hot spots. Well, they announced recently that they are starting back the joint patrols. They are resuming military regiment and police joint patrols. So we will be seeing some of that. Part of the problem with just the soldiers patrolling by themselves is soldiers do not have the power of arrest. They do not have the legal authority of police. A soldier is nearly like a civilian on the street. So that's why you have the joint patrol there. You have the police with the authority that is given to the law enforcement, and you have the soldiers there as just some extra manpower in it. So yes, they are resuming that. Trinidad too small to have hotspot areas. Well, it's not the size, it's the willingness to turn a blind eye. I'd say that's the most part of it in Trinidad. Yeah, those hotspot areas, you're thinking like, no way that should be able to happen, but unless someone wants to pay real serious mind to stopping it, it's not as easy as it might seem. No CCTV cameras yet. CCTV cameras where? Manny says UNC and PNM have failed. Let's give PEP a try. I don't believe in politics like that personally. Like, for one, when giving political parties a failing grade, we could wonder which political party has ever passed. Like, has there ever been a political party that passed? You're seeing these have failed. Has there ever been one that passed? And then you start to get the idea that maybe it's not so much a political party thing, it's a human issue, that humans have that problem. And then when I understand that, I am more of the view that I generally want the politicians to have as little power over other people's life as possible. The idea that maybe if we get the right politician in there, it's going to magically work, I am not that hopeful. I don't have that kind of hope. And the idea that, okay, well, we tried these before, give the other person a chance, I don't think that we should be deciding leadership of a country like that. It's not a raffle thing. I don't believe in giving somebody a chance just because they haven't gotten a chance yet. I think many times, in especially the modern generation, we underestimate the myriad of ways things can go worse than they are currently going. Like, okay, you might consider things to be bad in certain areas, but yes, they can get worse. They can. And the idea that you just make willy-nilly changes and change things on a whim is exactly how you get things to go from bad to worse. So yeah, I'm not in the belief of necessarily giving somebody a chance for giving them a chance sake. Like, if you want a chance, like, prove that that chance is going to be some kind of different thing. And I find it disappointing to me when I look out on our political landscape and so many of the other options seem like people who knocked at the doors of the main parties, and the main parties told them, well, you cannot get to the top of our ivory tower so easily. So they decided, well, I'm going to go in my own. It doesn't seem like someone who started just with the idea of wanting to make change in the country in my own unique way. No, I wanted to get into power politically. I tried in this party, I tried in this party, I didn't get through, so now I'm going alone. And then that doesn't give me much hope that, oh, you're just a really independent statesman like country first person. I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of hopeful guy. Earl Panton says people should think of this country as their own business. Yeah. Would you hire someone who's not qualified to run your family company? Precisely. Wendy Medium Excel says good night all, and good night to you too, Wendy. What's up? money change people. You know, I don't know if I fully agree with that. That money changes people. I don't think money changes people. I think money reveals people. Money just reveals what the person always was. Like, if you don't have enough money, you don't have the capability to do a lot of things. You know, if you're a psychopath that wants to kill the whole world, then if you're broke and you're a psychopath that wants to kill the whole world, well, you're just a psychopath on your own. Nobody's going to be bothered by you. You could be angry with the world and dig out of the dustbin. But if you're a psychopath and you want to kill the whole world, but then you have a couple $1 billion, it becomes much more of a problem. And if it is that the broke psychopath who wanted to kill the whole world got money and then tried to kill the whole world, it wasn't that the money changed them, it's just that the money revealed. The money revealed what the person always had on the inside. Now they're able to do it more openly. Money reveals that in people. So yeah, and the you see, what that causes is sometimes people have this incorrect assumption that if someone does not have a lot of resources, then that means automatically they will be more honest. So these people who are struggling there and poorer people, the poor people, they must be honest. While that mightn't be true, some of them may be dishonest too. And if they had more resources, they may be just as corrupt as the others up there. Many revolutions have proven that precise thing. You have the kings and queens up there and they're oppressing the country, and you're like, no, we don't want that. And you take some poor guy and you say, okay, you go be the new leader and take the place of that rich person, and then all of a sudden you notice this same poor guy has switched on us. Maduro, who is currently ruling Venezuela with an iron fist and has so many Venezuelans skating out of the country, coming to Trinidad and Tobago and many other places. Maduro was a bus driver, a lowly man of the people, working class. He is supposed to understand the struggle of the regular man, but money changed him, or money revealed what was always there. So yeah, I don't know if I think that money changes people. I think that money reveals people. There's a verse in the Bible, the good book, that says, if you're faithful over little, you'll be faithful over much. And I consider that to be one of the most important stories in life. And the problem is, many people don't believe that at all. Many people believe that, okay, if I have $50 and I don't know how to budget $50, if you give me 50 million, wow, I am going to budget that and spend that so well. And that is not actually true. The people who know how to use $50 are the people who would be really good with 50 million. And the people who are spendthrifts and spend out $50 are the people who would be spendthrifts and spend out 50 million. So if someone is slack and they're poor, they'll be slack when they're rich. The money doesn't make anyone better. It just reveals, as I said, what is already there. Renzo says the fact that it had shooting by a school and Noara speaks to the policies, to the policies, I guess, of the TTPS. Yeah, it does. It does. And that is the point. That is the point that people are saying. Schools are supposed to be, usually in most places, schools are, as it were, sacred ground. Sacred ground. The gangsters themselves in times gone before may have had rules about no, we don't, nothing happens near the school. But it's supposed to be that any criminal knows you don't do things next to the school, because the punishment of the law is going to come down so swift and so hard on you that you just don't do anything to schools. It seems like we're losing that more and more in Trinidad and Tobago. We're seeing holy buildings, the mandirs, the mosques, the churches. People are breaking in and taking things there. People are shooting school students. People are shooting outside of the school. The only thing that seems to still have that idea that if you touch it, you would have the law pounding down on you is probably the police officers themselves. Like, if you kill a police officer, well, yeah, you're in trouble. But beside that, well, nothing sends the country into red alert much anymore. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. All right. There, I have some more stories, but I don't know if you all are hearing. The rain is coming down some more, and the more it comes down, the worse the audio gets. I hope you all are hearing me clearly still. But as it comes down more, the audio gets a little worse. Nathan, if I was a soldier, I would have gone rogue. Well, you're saying what the allegations are for many, many soldiers out there. Many of the soldiers, the allegations that many of the soldiers are rogue soldiers. They moonlight as criminals constantly. So you're not saying something strange. That's what the allegations are about a lot of the soldiers. If I was a soldier, I would have gone rogue. Yeah. You're not the first one to think about it. Let's put it that way. Okay, any more questions or comments before we dive out tonight? Oh, Christopher Scott over there on YouTube. I'm now seeing this comment. Christopher Scott says he's misleading the country from his position when it concerns with security. The scanners are down in both ports. Police patrols are less in areas where it needed the most. Look what happened today with the suicide homicide, where it was mere feet away from the school. That school had to be closed. Would get more out of hand. Now, usually, as I regularly say, ha ha ha. All right, sir. All right. Usually, as I regularly say, I don't like to delve into like the more personal kind of stories. You know, that's just personal stuff. But something like that, crimes like that, as someone did point out, are on the law enforcement side really difficult to stop. That's not something that's easy to stop. Someone who doesn't have a history of criminality and has intention of killing someone, and also they have no care for their own life, like, that's really hard to stop. That's just the sad reality of those things. Brenzo says, the problem for me is not the 500 plus murders, it's the inability of the TTPS to solve crime. Well, the inability of the TTPS to solve crime is partly responsible for the 500 plus murders. Like, many people talk so often about bringing back the hangman and hang them high and hang them in Woodford Square and shoot them and da. Like, okay, even beside the moral arguments and the human rights arguments and whether it works or not, to hang the people, you have to catch them first. Out of the 500 plus murders for the year, how many of the murderers were caught? And then catching them is one. You have to convict them too. You know, you don't hang people just when you catch them and charge them. They are only hung after they are convicted. And if they are convicted of the most severe form of the crime. So that's what needs to be proven in that case. So the question here is, how often in Trinidad and Tobago, in the first place, do we catch the murderers? And then how often the murderers we catch, how long does it take to prosecute them, and how often are they prosecuted? And then when they are prosecuted, are they usually sentenced to the most extreme of sentences, even without there being the death penalty? So the problem there isn't even what we do with the murderers. If the police were just able to catch, if in Trinidad and Tobago, anytime you committed a murder, you would have been caught without fail and spent 25 years in jail. Not even life. 25 years in prison without fail. Anytime you commit a murder, it is going to happen without fail. I can assure you those murders wouldn't have been at the numbers they are. For one, many of those murders are probably committed by the same person or persons, and the possibility of being caught for sure is way more of a deterrent than the possibility of being hung if in the rare chance you do get caught. Yes, Jalicia, That's what we were speaking about for the majority of the live. If you want to see what was being spoken about and you missed some and you want to catch up, head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over there on YouTube, and you can follow me and catch up on the lives. So yeah. That's what we were speaking about, Jalicia. Sir says, does anyone here think there's a real way to diminish crime? Both violent crime and white collar crime. Yes, I do think so. I think there are many ways to reduce crime. Here are some of the ways to reduce crime. That, and different ones will take differing lengths of time. If you're talking about the source problem, then we have to create a culture where we decrease the societal permissibility in promiscuity. There was once upon a time in this society and in some other societies, it's still there, where it's not, there's a lot of social pressure for you not to be promiscuous. You would want to do that. You would want to increase the societal pressure on people being in long-term monogamous relationships, otherwise known as marriages. And by doing that, you decrease single-parent homes. Decreasing single-parent homes, I feel, might cut crime by itself by 75 to 80%. That alone. That's one. Another thing that I think would decrease crime is, in a country like ours, allowing more firearms. I know that's a controversial one, but I honestly do believe that. I think it will. It will, because when you look at beside the gang side level of crime, a lot of the criminals obviously doing crime with the full knowledge that they are running in at hapless victims. That's the nature of how they do that crime. So allowing people to defend themselves more, that's another way to decrease crime. Two ways. Another way, get someone at the top of the police service who is not a fellow police officer and who is not afraid to clean up the police service. Maybe fire half the police service if needs be, and let's work with half the number of police officers, with them all being much more honest. And that would decrease crime. Right there. Decreasing poverty will decrease crime. I disagree. I said it before. I do not believe poverty causes crime. I believe crime causes poverty. If the police were able to go into Laventille, go into Beetham, go into Sealats, and dispel all the criminal elements from those communities, the people in those communities will raise themselves out of poverty. The idea that people need help to be raised out of poverty as in a handout, no, that's not how it works. What you need to do is create the environment for people to raise themselves out of poverty. And one of the key factors for that environment is safety. I just spoke about that earlier on, where I believe that it's actually more vice versa, that crime causes poverty. The example of that very same school in that community, the school is closed now. Well, they're saying they're going to reopen it, but very likely, even when that school reopens, who is going to go to that school? Anyone who has the sufficient resources to leave that area, they're going to leave. The people that are going to remain in that school would be the people who do not have the resource. By and large, obviously, there would be other people too, but by and large would be people who do not have the resources to leave, or people who do not care about the level of education. And then you keep concentrating that group down into the community. That's what allowing crime to run rampant in a community does. That's what it does. It's not the poverty that brought that in, it's the criminality that brought in the poverty. And as Brenzo says, that's one of the problems I have with the idea that poverty causes crime. It seems to suggest that poor people are more dishonest than rich people. No, that is not true. That is not true. Whether somebody will steal something or not, whether someone is a thief or not, doesn't have to do with their poverty level. It has to do with their moral compass. There are people who will reach down to the last 1 cent and they will never steal anything. There are people who are billionaires and still steal constantly. poverty doesn't cause crime. Now, where there is some reality in that is poverty limits the kind of crime that you can do. As I spoke about earlier on, where I said that I don't think that money changes people as such, that money allows people to do what they already wanted to do. So poverty limits what you can do. I mean, if you are criminally minded and you are poor, the kind of crime that you could do is kind of limited. While if you're criminally minded and you have more resources, the kind of crime that you can do is, a little wider. So says, I'm thinking this country may need a dictatorship type government to reduce crime. That's the give and take in politics, That's the give and take in politics. The democratic system is a system that is slow, that is difficult to get things done. It's frustrating. Autocracies get things done much faster. China could get things done much faster. A supreme leader gets things done much faster. But we run into the same human problem. A dictator is still a human. Is there a human out there that you trust to give supreme power over the country? It's like the problem I have with socialists and communists. A lot of these socialists and communists, bear in mind nearly all of those Black Power movement and the social justice and the unions, etc., they are down that socialist, communist, more left side of the political landscape, the political compass. And the problem I have with them is many people on the left, they always say, they continually maintain that many of the current politicians are corrupt and they are bought out by the capitalists. The companies have them bought out, and okay, the politicians are corrupt. But your solution in socialism and communism is to give the politicians more power. You're going to give them the control over the entire economy. Like, okay, you're saying that the politicians that are currently there are doing a bad job. So your solution would be to give politicians the power, more power? Like, how does that work? I don't understand the logic in it. The current politicians that are there are failing at the job. So you know what we need to do? Give the politicians more power. And somehow people have the idea that if we give the politicians more power, the kind of people that are going to come into politics are going to be good, kind-hearted people who only see about the betterment of everyone else. No, it's literally the same kind of people. The same kind of people who are drawn to politics in this system would be the same kind of people drawn to politics if you give them more power. In fact, it might be some of the worst kinds. And then you are going to give them ultimate power over a country. There are very few places, if any, where that works. It's just not a viable solution, really. At least not for me. I prefer no thanks, no dictatorship on my part. Please and thanks. All right. Any further questions or comments? Rooney. Funny. Look at the hour you're now popping in here, Rooney. When I'm asking if anyone has any further comments or questions, you come in, hey. If there are no further questions or comments, or you will, well, grand. If there are no further questions or comments, I'm looking to dive out there. I hope you all were educated, informed, or entertained, and I'll see you guys in the next Mindful Live, which will not be tomorrow, it's the weekend. So the next Mindful Live will be Monday around 9:15 p.m., the usual time, and I will see you guys then. Peace. Enjoy your weekend. But of course, Nisi, of course, that is a must.